And taxonomy is a sentence level approach to error analysis, to thinking about error analysis. It's something that I might do as a teacher, but I wouldn't fully reveal to the students I'm working with. Like what I'm doing behind the scenes, even with students in this class who are native speakers, is simply just analyzing the use of language to see if I can figure out why the students are doing what they're doing, right? In some cases, it's just they may not understand where to put a comma. They may make consistent apostrophe errors. They may be struggling with sentence boundaries, like where do you put the period, where do you put a comma, what's the difference? So in a sense, I'm kind of behind the scenes diagnosing language use even in this class. But with English language learners, teachers may be diagnosing sentence level issues, not only for students with one native language that's not English, but multiple languages. So you may have, as a teacher, I don't know, 20 different home languages in your classroom. So simply learning, becoming bilingual is really helpful. I think it gives you a lot of tools for working with English language learners, and it gives you a lot of sympathy for the process of language acquisition. So I highly recommend learning another language as a way to teach English. But it's not the solution, right? So here in Oregon, where the Spanish language is so much a part of our lives, just learning Spanish won't solve the problem, because you may deal with students who are speaking Croatian or Chinese or Vietnamese or an African language in their home environment, right? So you won't have all the tools in your toolkit. So the best thing to do is to learn more about English and to learn strategies for helping draw English language learners into spoken, written English and gaining their reading comprehension skills as well. So the taxonomy is one way to do that. It's a way of kind of looking at a sentence or a paragraph or a passage and determining how errors are happening, like what kinds of errors are happening, which errors are negligible, things that don't matter, which errors are more important, and sort of prioritizing the way, like what I want to talk about first. As I said, when I'm working with native speakers, my first priority is sentence boundary issues, because I think those indicate the issues with comprehension of how grammar packages things. And for me, that's the top priority. It's also an error that lots of people notice when it happens in the workplace. And so it's important, I think, to address and get used to fixing sentence boundary errors if they're happening. Okay, so when I'm talking about taxonomy, I'm talking about the distance between the writing that's on the page and what maybe needs to happen to make the language comprehensible to a native speaker. And obviously this has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with the acquisition of the native language running interference with the student's understanding of English. There may also be rules that the student assumes operate in English that can't be applied in all instances of language use. So there's not only like the native language that's running interference with English, but also the student's partial understanding of English rules that may also be contributing. So part of what we're trying to do is figure out what's motivating the error that we're seeing. And I would never do taxonomy as a first thing to do with students. Always, 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 we're looking for fluency and content and communication and ideas and structures before we end up at the sentence level. Okay, so let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. Okay. So here's a sentence, right? This is a sentence that might have come from an English language learner essay, right? Those two problems make learning English in Hong Kong is so difficult that even a person put a lot of effort on this subject he or she may not have a good result, right? So there's a sentence. It has some errors in it. And one strategy that you can use to kind of figure out what the errors are that need to be addressed is to rewrite the sentence. So I'm just going to put some corrections in the sentence itself. And the goal would be to make corrections with it as little change to the student's language as possible. Again, I wouldn't do this with the student. I would do this with myself in preparation for working with the student. So I'm just going to think to myself, as a native speaker, what might need to be addressed? Those two problems make learning English in Hong Kong. So I think maybe the is doesn't need to be there. So I'm just going to line it out. Those two problems make learning English in Hong Kong so difficult that even a person, I think there's a missing word there, like an if, that even if a person, I think that's a spelling error, so I'm going to say put a lot of effort on, and I would say that's probably, for me, it needs to be into. Again, prepositions are really difficult in an ongoing way for non-native speakers of English. And if you've ever tried prepositions in another language, you probably get the same, have had the same problem. A lot of effort into the subject, even if a person puts a lot of effort into the subject, he or she may not have a good result. May not, I almost want to say that's almost okay for me. He or she may not get. Okay, so I'm not, like, I almost want to say for me in my ear, native speaker ear, I think that have is okay, but maybe get might be better. All right, so one thing you can do is just to try to rewrite, and that helps me identify the errors I might want to talk about with a student. I'm just going to highlight them so they're visible to me. So there's 5, I think, for me, right? As a teacher or as the boss of a writer that's producing language like this, you might have others that you think you need to deal with. But this is what I'm thinking for myself today. Okay, so the second thing I might do is to identify what kind of error it is. And you might remember that we've been working with, from Freeman and Freeman a long time ago, phonology, morphology, let's see, semantics. I don't think they talked about semantics, but word meanings, right? Syntax, right, is sentences, sentence structures. Right? Phonology is obviously sounds. Morphology has to do with word structures, right? And then something else that might also be operant here, as it would be in native speakers' language, is conventions, right? So what are the sort of native speaker conventions? I don't know if the student's having trouble with that. So I'm going to go back and try to sort of diagnose where the problems are happening. Okay, those two problems make learning English in Hong Kong is, so I think for me this is a syntax issue, this one. So I guess I'll put a D there. Even a person, it's a missing word. Again, I feel like that's a syntax issue. This looks to me to be a phonology issue. And I gotta say again, preposition has to do with, I'm gonna say semantics, but it may also be, maybe what I wanna say here, it could be idiom. Like I think a lot of prepositions are idiomatic, like they don't really make sense. I'm going to sit down, stand up, come into the room, put it into the document, put it on the document, right? Like some of those locations depend on, they're just idiomatic, they're weird and weirdly, they're weird to English. Okay, he or she may not get a good result. Again, I think this may be I think this may be semantics. Okay, and then here I put phonology, but it could also be morphology, right? So it could be not only the sound of the word, but also that the word put would need to have an S depending on its conjugation. Okay, so I have a sense of the types of errors, right? And I might also want to try to get at what's motivating them. Okay, so I'm going to say that I want to say that maybe the first two are arising in the syntax because of it's a complicated sentence structure and the student's having trouble managing it. Okay. I'm going to say that the homophone, the phonology, morphology, right, might just have to be, it might be, it just might be audio, oral, right? How the person is hearing the word. And then a lot of non-native speakers have trouble with the S's on the ends of verbs. So there might be some verb ending things going on there that we could talk about. Definitely we can talk about prepositions as idiomatic. I have a friend who's been in the US for 50 years and is still dealing with prepositions today after, so many years of using English. And then again, I'm not even sure, I'm thinking about priority, right? I'm not even sure that the last error is worth talking about because I don't think it affects the meaning really at all. But let's say it's right, we're saying it's maybe a semantics. And I'm going to think about priority-wise. I want to say that the syntax issues for me are the most important because they're affecting the meaning of the sentence so much. Like a reader encountering that sentence might not know what the writer is saying without dealing with the syntax issues. When I see the pit issue, I know the problem, right? And a native speaker could make a homophone error just as easily. So I guess I want to say that maybe these, the middle two are kind of mid-range importance to me. And then the last one is least important because the meaning isn't affected.